What's going on, guys? It's Chris Rosvoglou from the Straight Up Saints podcast, presented by Bucru Media and Hornitos Tequila, the official sponsor of Bucru Media and the Straight Up Saints podcast. And the Saints looked really great in their second preseason game. It was the first home preseason game. Obviously, the fans are excited to get into the Caesars Superdome and finally experience that full capacity crowd, which they haven't had for now 2 years, basically because of COVID-19. And there were so many takeaways from this game, but the one main one had to be Jameis Winston solidifying himself, at least in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, as QB1 for the New Orleans Saints. And obviously, the Saints coming into this game said they didn't know who the starter was going to be. And Sean Payton talked about how he would like to have his mind made up after this game and hoping that one of the quarterbacks would just blow him away and show that they can be that guy for the Saints. And Jameis Winston absolutely showed that. And I'll talk about it in just a second, some things that I saw. But before I do that, I want to remind you guys, if you're watching this video and if you enjoy Boot Crew Media's content, make sure to subscribe to their YouTube page and leave a like on this video. It definitely helps out the channel. And remember, we're going to drop live streams on the YouTube page for Boot Crew Media throughout the season, and you don't want to miss all those. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. It literally takes 1 second. Click the button and join the madness here at BKM. So let's go back into Jameis Winston. There were so many things to take away. And again, he didn't even play a full first quarter because he was that damn good that Sean Payton basically said, I saw what I had to see. And the thing for me that just really stood out was the touchdown field. You have an excellent strike to Marquez Callaway on the first drive. Later on, he goes back to Marquez Callaway again because why not? Number one is fantastic, and I'll talk about him in just a couple of minutes. And what I really liked about those throws from Jameis were they weren't him forcing it. It was the right throw. It was the right decision, and the touch on the deep ball was excellent. His second touchdown pass, actually, he withstood a huge shot from the defense. So he stood in there tough, made the throw because he knew the reward outweighed the risk of him taking on that shot. So I commend everything he did. And another thing, and it's not going to make the headlines, but that's when you see Jameis possibly changing his tune. 3rd and 16 after the Saints have two false starts. It goes from 3rd and 6 to 3rd and 16. Nothing really there. He doesn't force the issue. He goes into the flat to Tony Jones Jr. Tony Jones Jr. drops the ball. No big deal, though, because he's not forcing it. He's not making that throw back at Tampa where he's throwing it down the seam and throwing into double coverage, and you're saying, oh, here we go, same old Jameis. He didn't make that mistake. And yeah, it's just one play, but we didn't see him force the issue. He was a cool 9 for 10 for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, both touchdowns going to Callaway. He really showed tonight that he deserves this starting job. And we kind of knew that he'd have the lean because he's the guy who's been starting for 5 years, and he's a former number 1 overall pick, former Heisman winner, former national champion. The list just goes on for Jameis, and he's only 27, obviously, so maybe he could reach that full ceiling with Sean Payton at the helm. And I just really liked what I saw from Jameis Winston. And mind you, he did all this in 1 quarter of play, and not even a full quarter. Taysom Hill got way more playing time than him today because he needed it, because Jameis showed enough. And I think Sean Payton, he might not announce tonight or tomorrow that Jameis Winston the starter. I think after today, though, this game against the Jaguars, he absolutely is thinking to himself, Jameis Winston starting week 1 against the Packers. And it's the right call and the right play. So commend Jameis Winston. He came out and he seized the opportunity, he seized the moment. And everyone watching, you can't lie to yourself. It seemed really nice to see a quarterback throw the ball down the field for the Saints. And look, I love Drew Brees. I will always love Drew Brees, but we didn't have that vertical passing attack for the last couple of years. Well, it's back and it's in full force, especially with Jameis Winston, because we know he has the arm talent. He really is just a special thrower of the football, I should say. I think it's the best way to put it for Jameis Winston. So number 2, balls out. Number 2 is QB1. No doubt in my mind. I'm ready to stamp it, ready to make it official. Just waiting to hear Sean Payton say the word. But this is such a great moment for the Saints, and it makes you feel a little optimistic going into the regular season. He's not the only offensive player that came out and showed out tonight against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Marquez Callaway, take a bow. For years, we've heard of the training camp darlings, the guys who look great in practice, but then the games come around and they don't really show it. Marquez Callaway is looking great in practice, and somehow he's looking even better in the games. We saw against the Ravens in the preseason opener that he looked sharp, 61 receiving yards on the first drive, and that was with Taysom Hill. So he comes out now with Jameis Winston, totally different quarterback, totally different play style, and obviously you have a different cadence with your quarterbacks. And it doesn't matter. He looks fantastic in this one. 5 catches, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns, just burning the secondary down the field against some really good players, too. He was going up against guys like Tyson Campbell, who are high draft picks for the Jaguars. So he's not going up against scrubs, although he made them look like it on Monday night with the way he played. And Marquez Callaway is showing that, yes, we know that the Saints receiving corps is unproven, but he is not. He's showing that he can hold his own weight, and it makes you wonder, when Michael Thomas comes back and Marquez Callaway becomes wide receiver 2, you might have one of the best wide receiver duos the Saints have had in a while, probably since Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks. So I'm really excited to see what Callaway can do, not only as the wide receiver 2, but what he can do as that wide receiver 1. And remember, he's doing a lot of this without Traquan Smith on the field, without Deontay Harris getting a lot of snaps. So in my opinion, his usage will only get better as this goes on. And he really is showing that the Saints strike gold when they go to Tennessee players, whether it's Alvin Kamara, whether it's Marquez Callaway, the list goes on and on. They have been fantastic going to the Volunteers. So I love what Callaway's done. He has absolutely lived up to the hype. And then some. Somehow he's done that. I really didn't think he would. I knew Callaway was going to have a good year, but I saw Callaway as a 600 to 700 yard guy. Maybe it seems like an overreaction, but if he plays all 17 games, how does he not have 1,000 yards receiving? Like, that's how good this player is and how great he's been for the Saints in the first 2 preseason games. So Jameis Winston, QB1, Marquez Callaway looking like a wide receiver 1 for now, and an absolute surefire wide receiver 2 when Michael Thomas comes back. And if that's the case, Michael Thomas does come back after the first month of the season, all those people, including myself, who were worried about the wide receiving corps, that changes an awful lot, guys. An awful lot, because you have 2 guys who can create separation on their own. It really opens up the passing attack for the Saints. Now, I know I'm sitting here gushing over Jameis Winston and Marquez Callaway, and rightfully so, because they were phenomenal. I want to give some love to the Saints front 7. I thought this was a unit that swarmed to the football again, whether it was Marcus Davenport or even Cam Jordan had a couple of good rushes here and there. And then the defensive tackle play. You also have Jalen Dalton, who comes up with a really clutch sack at the end of the first half, forces the Jaguars to go from a potential touchdown to a field goal attempt to a field goal miss. And those are huge. And the Saints actually go down the other end in 36 seconds to get a field goal of their own. So plays like that, I know it's the preseason, but you're kind of simulating that real life week 1, week 2 type feel, and it goes a long way. So to see this front 7 in the first half just swarm Trevor Lawrence every single down, that's what you want to see. So that was impressive. And again, I got to tip my cap. I'm talking about the front 7. Zach Bond continues to look energetic and kind of really molding into that off-ball linebacker the Saints want him to be. I know a lot of us were kind of confused they went that route, but clearly the Saints know what they're doing, because Zach Bond in the first 2 preseason games has looked like an absolute stud so far. Now, does that carry over to the regular season? Who knows? We're going to find out in September. But you're looking at this guy right here and you're saying, with DeMario and Quan and Pete Werner and Zach Bond and Caden Ellis and even Hansen, this is a really nice linebacker group. And then you have to factor in the defensive line getting better, and they should only get better when Peyton Turner comes back. The front 7 is going to carry this team, and it's going to carry them for a while, in my opinion, because they can do that. Now, it's not all good news for the Saints. I remember we're kind of keeping this recap video a little bit shorter than I would a podcast. Obviously, the podcast usually ranging about a half hour. This one not as long. It wasn't all good news for the Saints. Adam Troutman, your number 1 tight end, goes down with an ankle/foot injury, gets carted off in the first quarter. And obviously, you're not happy about that. You are livid, because Adam Troutman's kind of that breakout player candidate that the Saints have been talking about. And the one thing for me, and it has nothing to do about the breakout part, Adam Troutman's the only tight end the Saints really have that does both roles, both blocking and receiving well. Nick Vannett is an excellent blocker, a subpar receiver. Jawan Johnson is a wide receiver converted tight end. So what does he do really well? He's a really good pass catcher. What is he getting better at? Blocking, but he still has to make that transition, because you go from blocking corners, blocking linebackers and defensive ends. That's pretty tough, guys. So I want to see what happens there. Now, if Jameis Winston's your QB1, yeah, Taysom Hill from time to time, you might be able to get him in that slash H-back role, and who knows what could happen there. That could be exciting. But Adam Troutman's injury is something to monitor. Fingers crossed that it's not long-term. And when you see him get carted off and the shoe's already off and it's an ankle injury, you know it's a foot/ankle injury, that's an issue. I really, really hope he's okay, because this is a player who I want to see this season. I want to see him ball out for sure. So that's something that everyone should keep an eye on and monitor throughout the week. And obviously, I'll update you guys on my Twitter account as the week goes on. Another thing, another note, and this isn't bad at all. but it's something, again, you want to talk about monitoring with roster cuts, we got to look out for. Tony Jones Jr. was the starting running back today. Why does that matter? Well, Alvin Kamara wasn't going to play, and that's the right decision. He should be on ice. Put him on ice like Captain America until week 1 and then unleash him. But for now, you need to see who's going to be that RB2. And we kind of thought Latavius Murray would be penciled in, but then week 1 of the preseason happens, and Latavius fumbles, and he looks slow, doesn't have the juice. And Tony Jones Jr., on the other hand, looks phenomenal for the exception of one fumble, which obviously wasn't ideal. But he looked like a great runner. His vision was there. He was making the right cuts. He just brought some oomph to that position. I know it's ridiculous. I just said oomph, but he did. Okay. And the Saints start him tonight. And Lisa Salters reports that, if it came down today, Tony Jones Jr. would probably be the RB2 for the Saints. And that's really important because at this rate, I don't think it's a stretch to say, hey, the Saints could cut Latavius Murray. I really don't think it's a stretch. I don't. And I think Tony Jones Jr. at RB2 is the right play. He's younger. He's faster. He's under team control for the next couple of seasons. So I just think all around it's the right move for the Saints. And he's looked like the better player. So when the eye test is telling you that he looks faster and sharper and just way more versatile, I'd rather go with him. And now we still have one more preseason game left and a couple more weeks of practice, and things can change. But as of now, the shocker of training camp / preseason, Tony Jones Jr. not fighting for a job, basically taking other people's jobs away with the way he's playing. He's been that good, and you just can't help but say the Notre Dame product is RB2 for the Saints right now. So I'm really impressed with Tony Jones Jr., and I have to tip my cap to him. I'm not literally going to tip my cap because I'm not taking my cap off right now, but I would tip my non-existent cap if I had one. I would tip it to him because he was great. So overall, guys, that's probably going to do it for this recap video for the second preseason game. But the Saints looked great on both sides of the ball. A lot of energy on defense, and obviously the offense, big plays and splash plays here and there with Jameis Winston and Marquez Callaway. So overall, you got Jameis Winston being QB1 in almost all of our books. You got Marquez Callaway living up to the hype. You got the front seven looking phenomenal, but you do have some situations to monitor with Adam Troutman and Latavius Murray. One being an injury, one potentially being on the roster bubble after kind of being thought of as a sure thing. We'll see what happens there, but that's going to do it, guys. Make sure to subscribe to Boo Crew Media's YouTube page, like this video, and stay tuned for more content in the future, not just from me, but from Boo Crew Media in the future. So thanks for listening, guys, and stay tuned for more Saints content coming up this week.